For joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute. I have it in my brain that as soon as the participants are at 50, we'll get started. We're at 48 right now, so. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Friday afternoon. I'm really excited for the conversation and dialogue that we'll have here today. This is the first in a series of events and discussions and workshops that we are hosting around how to move downtown Albuquerque forward. The next event that we have is going to be an in-person event on June 1st, featuring Peter Kayagama, and he is a national circuit speaker who talks about how to be a co-creator and how to make urban places really vibrant. So it's going to be at the Chemo Theater. We also have some speakers from New Mexico Community Capital talking about the good work that they're doing right here locally in downtown Albuquerque. I want to thank the sponsors for this event here today, the Albuquerque Community Foundation and the Greater Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce, along with the City of Albuquerque, are sponsoring this event here today. The Greater Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce has downtown transformation as one of their bold issue topics. This is just a page from their report, annual report, sort of highlighting the initiatives and focus that they're putting on elevating downtown, and really want to thank them for their ongoing support. So my name is Karen Iverson, and I am the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency Manager. We're a division within the City of Albuquerque. I want to thank my great colleagues within the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency, Sierra and Lithgow, Sarah Allen, and Omega Delgado. They are a mighty team, and I'm really pleased and have the pleasure of working with all of them. So we are here today to discuss and learn about downtown and its strengths and weaknesses as it compares to other emerging downtowns. We have our keynote speaker, Kathy Lynn, I'll introduce in a moment, but I was really pleased to be able to chat with Councillor Jones recently and invited her to give some introductory remarks. Councillor Trudy Jones is the Albuquerque City Councilor for District 8 in Northeast Albuquerque. I was looking at a map, and I think it might actually, if I drew a line to the corner of your district, it might actually be physically the furthest away from downtown, from its nearest corner. So we're really excited that you're here with us today. She was first elected in 2007 and has been reelected 3 times. So hats off to Councillor Jones in the public service of sitting up on that dais and helping us through all of the complicated policy decisions that have occurred since that time. Councillor Jones retired in December 2010 after a 30-year career as a commercial real estate broker and as director at Maestas Ward Commercial Real Estate. She was CCIM and Society of Industrial and Office Realtors certified. She served as the president of CARNM, the Commercial Association Realtors of New Mexico, the Leasing Information Network, and the local chapter of CCIM. We're really excited to have her in support of our efforts and look forward to her giving us some opening remarks from her perspective. I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Karen. Lovely introduction. I appreciate it. I'm The only reason I've done all those things is because I am so old and have worked for so long. But thank you anyway for that. I'm going to expand my opening remarks a little bit. I think it's wonderful that we are looking at downtown, but my idea of Albuquerque from the first moment I came here, I was transferred over here with a company out of Phoenix, a small town farm girl from Nebraska, not a very, very small town in Nebraska. So Phoenix was a big leap for me, and I grew to appreciate it, never love it. Was transferred over here and loved it. Love everything about this city. Right now we're struggling, we need help, and the business community is the one to lead this. Let's talk about not just downtown to start, but let's talk about Central Avenue. Albuquerque does have a road that identifies us. It's very famous, topic of several television series. When we enter Albuquerque's area from the west and we look down off the hill at the skyline and the magnificence of the city of Albuquerque, it captures hearts, and people come here having worked with any number of companies from out of state. They are mesmerized by our climate, our views, and our people. Unfortunately, we have, if this is a word, unmesmerized most people because of the condition of our downtown and our Central Avenue. I cannot just narrow this to downtown. It's all of Central Avenue that City of Albuquerque is known for. It's all of Central Avenue that is now harmed and needs to be brought back into the repair, and the loving, loving Route 66. What was the name? Kooky, lend me your comb. Does anybody remember that? No. Okay, old TV show. We need help, and it's the business people, it's the people who love this city as much as I do, who understand that we are the backbone. We, the business people, are the backbone. And when we get the buy-in and the cooperation of the citizens, which I think you all have right now to do something with downtown and with Central, we're at a great place to do something. So I'm pleased to see the number of people, the people who are just getting started perhaps in business in Albuquerque, and the ones who have been here for years and have learned to love it as much as I have. I'm pleased that you're doing this. I hope I can be of some assistance, but let me just remind you, we are a blight. Albuquerque is a blight right now when people drive in from out of state and drive across Route 66/Central Avenue. We have to fix that. And we have to fix that as quickly as we can. We have to support our local businesses, and we have to invite in new businesses. This is how a city grows and thrives. So I am prepared to help in any way I can. I love this city. I have no intention. People have said, where are you going to go when you're out of this, finished with the city? And I said, I'm going to go play in my garden at home, and I'm going to live in Albuquerque. This is my home. So I hope you all feel the same way. I hope we're not just talking about a business venture. And thank you for inviting me here. I hope to watch. I will be watching to see what you all come up with. Thank you for your investments, both personal and financial, in the city of Albuquerque. And thank you for inviting me to welcome you today. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So a little bit of housekeeping. We have, if you want to submit a question, please use the Q&A function. That would be my preference. I mean, you can put something in the chat, but I may not get it. So if you use the Q&A function, that would be a little more clear and easy for me to catch the specific questions. So now I would like to introduce Kathy Lynn. Kathy joined the International Downtown Association team in June of 2008, and she leads the in-house research efforts to provide up-to-date information to the International Downtown Association's member organizations and the place management industry. Prior to joining IDA, Kathy was a project manager for the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia and a planner on the strategic research team at the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Singapore. Kathy has a master's in urban planning from Harvard University, Graduate School of Design, and a bachelor's of arts in economics and geography from Northwestern University. In the spare time, she enjoys tasting new food types, exploring neighborhoods, and attempting to learn more languages. And I happen to know that she just got back from the south of France. So last year, the city of Albuquerque contracted with the International Downtown Association to be a member of their cohort in their annual Value of Downtown series. And so I'm pleased to turn it over to Kathy, who will be sharing the outcome of that with us and allow us to sort of see our downtown in context of other downtowns across the country. So Kathy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. And I'm really looking forward to sharing and discussing our research on the value of downtown Albuquerque today. It's been great to work with Karen and her team over the past year at the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency on this study. And we really do want this to be a discussion towards the end. So please do type in your questions into the Q&A as they come up. So let me just share my screen now. Okay, and you can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so just a little bit about IDA before we jump in. So we are the International Downtown Association and represent urban place management professionals who work in downtown organizations, redevelopment authorities, and all other types of public and nonprofit organizations that focus on shaping and activating dynamic city centers. And our members are all across North America, primarily in the US and Canada. So we offer education, research, and leadership networking to this tremendous industry, which really focuses on what happens in the spaces in between the buildings in cities. So we firmly believe that great cities start downtown because that's where people come together for a multitude of reasons. Downtowns are the epicenter of the economy, of innovation. It's where we meet, we shop, we live, we play, and where we also debate and remember our shared history and engage with the community. And as stewards of this space, our industry and urban place management professionals really work to activate our public spaces and support downtowns in so many different ways. Here, there's just a few images coming from downtown Seattle, of food trucks in the plaza, playful seating for office workers, and it's all about creating a different experience and a different environment downtown. People coming downtown are often surprised by what they see there with activations that could be these basketballs in an alleyway or a musician here in Chicago with the left shark popping up right next to him. And of course, cities are so special because no matter how we design or program them, people will use them the way that they want to be used. And downtowns are so central to allowing flexibility and creativity for all people and uses. Now, of course, the past 2 years in particular have been very challenging for downtowns and cities as a whole. The impacts of COVID, the social unrest in 2020 has brought enormous changes and really brought to the forefront again about what is downtown and who is it for. Downtowns do continue to face low foot traffic as the return to office is slow, which is hurting small businesses that depended on that foot traffic. Public safety, again, is a paramount issue all across the country, compounded by security staffing shortages and more visible street disorder and increased numbers of homeless population on the streets. Albuquerque is facing similar trends, but is certainly not alone in these challenges, which we see all across the US. Nevertheless, COVID, as has been talked about, has really been an accelerant of many trends that were happening prior to the pandemic. And with downtowns, downtowns are no exception to that. Before the pandemic, downtowns were on an exceptional growth trend with incredible economic and residential growth. And notably, downtowns were already transitioning away from being an office-focused central business district to one that is more mixed use, vibrant at all hours, and destinations for all. And we've seen that those that are the more mixed use amenitized areas have really been able to rebound the quickest from the effects of the pandemic. And it's those elements that continue to make us really optimistic about the future of downtowns and the role that they play as a heart of a city. Here on this slide, I've just highlighted two articles that came out last year or so. The article on the left is by renowned urbanist Richard Florida, which discusses this future of the central business district, transitioning away from office uses to one of great vibrancy, fitting into the ideal of that 15-minute city where everything you need is accessible in 15 minutes. On the right, the article is by David Dixon, an urban planner with Stantec and longtime partner at IDA. He sees a new era of downtown opportunity for two key reasons. One is that the knowledge economy is going to continue to dominate economic growth, and those who fill these jobs, who tend to be more highly educated, still prefer living in walkable, mixed-use downtowns in those nearby neighborhoods. The second reason focuses on demographic change and the future shift in housing. More and more households in the future will be singles and couples without children, and those households want to live in multifamily housing and have access to experiences and vibrancy. And that all comes together downtown. This potential for housing growth, especially over the next 20 years, will significantly support the mixed-use development of city centers. In addition, that additional residential population will further support our retail environments downtown. Retail consultant Robert Gibbs estimates that each downtown resident supports 100 square foot of retail versus only 25 square foot for each worker. So even if not all workers ever return to a 5-day in the office schedule, there's still ample room for increased retail and vibrancy in a growing downtown population. So with all of that context in mind, let me turn now to the value of downtown study. This is IDA's signature research initiative. And the key goal when we established this study was to articulate and quantify the value of downtown, going beyond economic figures to really encapsulate all that makes downtown special. We've studied more than 40 cities from all across the US, and our study really focuses on evaluating downtown metrics on their own over time, as well as in comparison to citywide and region-wide metrics. So our study classifies kind of the value of downtown into these 5 principles: economy, inclusion, vibrancy, identity, and resilience. And throughout the presentation, I'll talk in more detail about what each of those means and what kinds of metrics that we used in each of those principles. Now, the first question when we begin any of these studies is, where exactly is downtown? What may be an official or political definition doesn't always match what people think about the definition of downtown or where downtown is. And so we try to balance both of those perspectives as well as with the best fit based on census tracts due to data availability. So in this case, for downtown Albuquerque, we focused on the concentrated core downtown, which is Census Tract 21 in Bernalillo County. This half square mile area runs east-west from Broadway to 8th Street Northwest and north-south from Lomas Boulevard to Cole Avenue. The city that we compared to was, of course, the city of Albuquerque, and the region was the Albuquerque metro area. And so our research revealed that downtown makes up far less than 1% of the city's land area, but is a dense employment center with 6% of the city's jobs and an area of residential growth. It's really notable for the 60% increase in residential population between 2010 to 2019, although employment numbers have not shifted much in that period. By contrast, in the city as a whole, population has grown just 1%, but employment has increased by 11%. And as a part of our study, we also classify downtowns based on their typologies and their stage of development. So we have the established, the growing, and the emerging tiers, and Albuquerque fits well amongst its peers in the emerging downtowns, as you can see, and you can see the full list of those cities in the table on the left here. So throughout the presentation, I'll also be making some comparisons to this tier of downtown to help situate Albuquerque in the national context. So the first principle that we look at is economy, and downtowns, of course, make up a small share of their city's land area, but have substantial economic importance. First and foremost, downtown is a center of jobs. In this very small area, again, just that half square mile, there are more than 16,000 jobs, or 6% of citywide jobs. As the map on the right show, this 6% is more than many other entire council districts. And this level of job density also ranks Albuquerque in the 75th percentile of all of our study downtowns. So there are nearly 34,000 jobs per square mile in downtown Albuquerque, whereas other emerging downtowns average just 20,000. The jobs downtown tend to be higher paying, earning at least 40,000 or more for 60% of jobs downtown. In comparison, at the city and regional level, only 40% of jobs pay more than 40,000. This contributes to the wealth of the region, as most downtown workers reside outside of downtown. And so this map here is illustrating the zip codes where workers are coming from to work downtown. I'm not sure if you can see the exact zip codes very clearly, but for example, the darker blue is where more downtown workers reside. So all the way to the west in zip codes 87121 and zip code 87120, there's 10% of downtown workers reside in each of those zip codes. However, downtown's jobs are highly dependent on the public sector. So this has some benefits in that public administration jobs tend to be more stable, and it certainly shielded downtown Albuquerque from the effects of the Great Recession, really not seeing any drop in jobs in that 2009-10 period that we saw in many other downtowns across the country. However, public jobs tend generally not to grow significantly, and downtown economic growth is largely driven by the private sector, which has remained notably flat or even in decline in downtown over the past 20 years. And so those private industries are the ones kind of towards the bottom of this chart here. The pink one, which would be the industry that downtown has the most of in terms of private jobs, is the professional, scientific, and technical services sector. So compared to the city, downtown private jobs have declined by 20%, whereas they've grown in the city in other parts of Albuquerque by 9% between 2010 and 2018. As I mentioned in the beginning, one of the broad national trends for downtown is the growth of the knowledge economy. And we see that in a few sectors in Albuquerque, especially in finance, insurance, real estate, and in the healthcare and social assistance industries, both of which have doubled in their jobs between 2010 and 2018. However, sharp declines in other sectors or a lack of growth have really led to a flat knowledge job trend downtown. And then the chart on the right shows how downtown Albuquerque compares to other emerging downtowns. So while comparable in the relative lack of job growth, so that stability and is not unique to Albuquerque, the citywide jobs percentages are much lower. So this is partially due to the small size of downtown that we looked at in this study, but also to the relative sprawl of jobs in the city of Albuquerque versus many of our other emerging downtowns. One area that does stand out is creative jobs, which include performing and visual arts, museums, theaters, etc. So Albuquerque at 22% nearly matches the other emerging downtowns, which have 28% of citywide creative jobs. Although this data, I will note, is prior to the establishment of the Netflix facility in Albuquerque. Finally, on the fiscal side, downtown not only contributes to the wealth of the region through its jobs, but also through its higher land and real estate values. So on average, land downtown is worth is nearly 5 times more valuable per square mile than the citywide average. And downtown land value has grown 26% since 2010. A lot of the land downtown is publicly owned though, so there is some discrepancy between the market value and the tax value of land downtown. But on the whole, as we've seen across all of the downtowns that we've studied, land downtown is much more valuable than land on average in the rest of the city. The second principle that we look at is inclusion. And so as the literal and figurative heart of their cities, downtowns represent and welcome residents, employees, and visitors from all walks of life. And downtown Albuquerque is diverse in race and ethnicity, most residents being Hispanic or Latino or white, with a notable number of Native American residents as well. This mix of population leads to downtown scoring extremely high on the diversity index, a score of 78.3, which means that for any 2 residents downtown that meet, there's a 78% chance that they are of a different race or ethnicity. This far exceeds the average of 64 for emerging downtowns, which already themselves are the most diverse tier of any of our tiers of downtowns. And like most downtowns, Albuquerque is home to significantly more younger residents than the city, except for children under 18. So 38% of downtown residents, the big pink pie chart there, those are young professionals from ages 25 to 34. Now turning to income and rent. Downtown Albuquerque has a relatively high proportion of low-income households, but rents are also more affordable. This chart on the right shows how, compared to the city and region, downtown residents have a much higher proportion of households that are earning less than $15,000 a year, and a much lower proportion of households earning more than $75,000. So this difference is partially due to the focused efforts of the city to build more affordable units downtown. And there were 375, or nearly 30% of all affordable units that were funded by the city were built downtown since 2010. This is further illustrated in these charts looking at household income over time. So the lowest income bracket there at the top in hot pink, income under 20,000 has grown significantly, particularly after 2010 with the development of the new affordable housing units, while the other brackets have remained at relatively stable levels downtown. But on the right-hand side of this chart, which is showing the city household income by income change over time, it does show significant growth in the higher income households, which are the lines in the blues. And so it's laudable that with the focus on affordable housing units, rents downtown have really not changed that much from 2010 to 2019, and median gross rent is far below the city average. So we often see the opposite trend in many other downtowns, and those downtowns and cities are really struggling to bring their rents back to affordable levels so that they can support workforce housing. However, the rent burden in Albuquerque, or those who are paying more than 30% of their income on rent, is higher than the city, so due to the low income of most of those households. Still, on the average, living downtown is more affordable than living elsewhere in the city, because not only are we looking at housing costs, but if we also look at transportation costs in the housing and transportation index. So downtown residents on average, when you spend about 34% of their income on housing and transportation, which make up the 2 biggest costs for a typical household, whereas in the city and region, you would need to spend 50% or more of your income on housing and transportation.
So Kathy.
Yes.
So I just want to, I want to emphasize a few things in this data, just in case, because I can't see people. I can't read their faces. But if you go back to the slide that has the residential growth. on it, which I think was a little bit in the beginning of your presentation.
The one, this one?
Yeah, that one right there. So folks, look at this. The growth of the population in downtown in that half-mile square block was 60% compared to 1% in the entire city. That's huge. That's a huge amount of growth. I mean, granted, it was probably like not very much to start with, but you know, we have increased, you know, when you're starting with not very many units, you know, everything counts. So we've done a lot of, there's been a lot of new growth in downtown relative to the rest of the city.
Absolutely.
And then going back to those slides you were just talking about, with the rents and the production. So the reason why the incomes are lower in downtown is because we've built a lot of affordable housing downtown. This was not, you know, an pre-existing condition. It's what we have built because the subsidies were, I think, one, from a policy point of view of just wanting to ensure affordable housing. I think we've paid it forward. And two, because of the financing and the subsidies that are available. So, you know, the charts look very different between downtown and the city in terms of how rents have changed over time. And the downtown charts show a growth in the production of affordable rental housing, which looks very different from the city overwide, which saw more growth in production of market rate housing. So I think it's just important to understand that that the development is what, the building and the development is what's driven those changes in the numbers. Would you say, Kathy, or what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's really a strong policy statement that you know, the city did fund so many affordable units downtown because, like I mentioned, in so many other cities across the country, it's a real struggle now that rents have increased exponentially to try to backfill in that affordable housing. So getting that in now, kind of making sure that it's stable, that there is opportunity for those households to be located downtown where they also have better access to other jobs and opportunities and amenities is so critical. So absolutely, thank you for emphasizing that, Karen, about the increase in the affordable housing units. But I think also overall, we also do want to keep in mind that while we definitely want to support those lower income households, that mix of housing at all income levels is important for the long-term sustainability of downtown, especially as, of course, higher income households would have more disposable income to support you know, the local commerce. And so you know, overall, I think we want to try to see as much growth in population across all of these different income segments so that downtown is really a place for everyone. And then next, I'm going to turn to vibrancy. Again, really about the ability of vibrant places to attract visitors and new residents. And this slide here, I think, just kind of further emphasizes what we were just talking about in terms of the residential growth. So downtown population is growing much faster than the rest of the city and region, and 60% increase in the population, 70% increase in the housing units from 2010 to 2019. And this map here on the right is of the city of Albuquerque, and you can see, you know, the areas of growth in green, which are tend to be around the fringes of the city, but also in downtown Albuquerque, right in the center, outlined in black there. And so, you know, downtown growth is really, downtown core is really a beacon of growth amongst other slower growing or even declining neighborhoods around the city. With all of that growth, the downtown residential density is still relatively low, just 4 residents per acre compared to the emerging downtown average of 6.7. And so this implies that while downtown has grown a lot, there is definitely still a lot of potential for more residents, more housing downtown. And that small downtown population does create a dependence on visitors and employees for the retail sector. And so while downtown has a denser concentration of storefronts than the city overall, the total number of retail and restaurant businesses is low compared to other study areas. So this does present sort of a chicken and egg conundrum, as people who want to move downtown want to have easy access to the amenities and experiences. But if there isn't enough residential demand, those restaurants and stores struggle to survive. Still, there are many positive signs of an emerging retail base in downtown. In 2015, downtown retail space rented for just under $11 a square foot, and there's a 19% retail vacancy rate. But in 2021, even beyond the great decline of 2020 with COVID, those figures are rents for $17.60 per square foot and just an 8% vacancy rate downtown. So I think a lot of promise there in terms of the future of retail, particularly if you're able to bring in that additional residential population and housing to support retailers. Our fourth principle is identity, and downtowns and center cities often serve as iconic symbols of their cities, creating a strong sense of place that enhances local pride. And really, identity is all about what makes downtown so special. And downtown Albuquerque is a historic arts-focused center, and it's really kind of unique in its relative distance from other large cities. And so this creates a captive audience for local tourism and an opportunity for downtown to be that regional center of great cultural experiences. Downtown, of course, is already the center of high-profile annual events like Somos, Albuquerque, and Summerfest, and the monthly Art Walk highlights great local artists. There's a wealth of theaters downtown. But one thing that is a little bit missing from downtown is more park and green spaces. So while the Civic Plaza is a great central plaza for community events, more park space, large or small, even little pocket parks downtown, would offer residents, families, and other visitors more opportunities for recreation and a respite from the urban environment. And the last principle is resilience. And so downtowns and center cities play a crucial role in building stability, sustainability, and prosperity for the city and the region. And so we look at resilience in terms of economic, social, and environmental resilience. Here, I'll just focus on social and environmental. So on the social side, downtown concentrates a multitude of community resources. And again, the high number of affordable housing units that we talked about before also really allows those residents to access opportunities that downtown has to offer. On the environmental side, living downtown is more sustainable. So downtown households on average emit 37.5% less greenhouse gases than the household citywide, totaling 3 tons fewer per household than the citywide average. So data shows that the average downtown household has 1.2 cars versus a citywide average of 1.6. So owning fewer cars, being closer to more transit options, being able to walk and bike to different job opportunities and amenities is really what makes living downtown a lot more sustainable. And we see that also in the commuting patterns. Downtown residents, 19% take transit to work, 11% walk to work, and those percentages far exceed the 2% across the city and region that use those forms of transportation for commuting. And it's especially notable that the 2009 data showed that no downtown residents took transit to work, but now that 19% do. The development of the bus rapid transit probably bring those numbers up even further, although COVID has also had an impact on public transportation ridership. Nevertheless, because of this data, downtown Albuquerque is really stronger than most emerging downtowns in terms of sustainable commute, as well as in the bike and transit scores. So a lot of opportunity there for more sustainable modes of transportation. And so to conclude, we've talked about how Albuquerque is an emerging downtown, and there are strengths and weaknesses, opportunities for improvement, but on the whole, there is a lot of potential and momentum for an emerging downtown with an increasingly diversified economy, particularly trying to build out those private sectors, increasing housing at all income levels and bringing in that additional vibrancy with the new residents and additional green space. Downtown Albuquerque is really poised to create a more equitable and inclusive urban core for a vibrant city. Already has a diverse community. We have some growing trends in both, particularly on the residential side. And adding to that mix of strong urban place management, bringing together both the private business side as well as the public sectors to focus on downtown and strengthen the core. Downtown Albuquerque has so much potential for the future to become a real regional center for the area. And so with that, thank you so much for inviting me and for listening to me today. That was a lot of data, so really would love to turn it over to you all to see if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer questions or provide any clarifications on the data.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy. For those of you asking, both the full report, I think the full report is posted now on our website, and Sarah put the link to that in the chat, and we will get the summarized PowerPoint presentation up there later today. But my takeaways from this, what I took away from it was that our population has increased downtown by 60% over the last decade, that the employment base, we've got 6% of the city's employment in only less than 1% of the city's area. Of course, we need to do a better job at diversifying and attracting more private sector business downtown. The taxable property value downtown is 3 times higher than the city average. The retail sales are 3 times higher than the city average. Downtown households emit almost 40% less greenhouse gases than the city average. And people living downtown are spending far less on what is their combined housing and transportation costs. So it's an affordable place. So I think, we like to focus on the negatives sometimes when it comes to downtown. We know we have to work on safety and other issues, but there's a lot here to build on when we look at moving downtown forward. So I think that this study did a good job at bringing out some of the highlights. So let me see what I got for questions here. I got some big questions. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer. Let's see here. You guys are asking some really big philosophical questions, man. So John Bell asks, will IDA's 5 principles for a strong downtown be adopted by all Albuquerque stakeholders as a common framework? I love it. And I think, to that point, I don't think I can answer that question because it's not really for me. I guess it's for all Albuquerque stakeholders. But I think that one of the values of doing this study was that it gives us a benchmark for some things. It's like a report card that we can now develop some metrics that we can see how we change over time and move the needle on some things. So beginning to develop a dashboard for downtown redevelopment and economic vibrancy. I think that was one of the goals for us in the report. Kathy, do you have any ideas on that comment?
No, I mean, it would be fantastic for the city as a whole to kind of adopt those principles. But certainly we also at IDA do keep track of our study participants each year when the new census data comes out. So we're also developing our own kind of database to put together the data for all 40 plus of our downtowns to see how they're changing over time across some of these key metrics. So, certainly we continue to work with all of our partners on their data and where they're going in the future.
Mary asked why Councillor Benton wasn't here as the introductory speaker. And I will let you know that I spoke to Councillor Benton and I asked his permission to have Trudy Jones. And he was more than happy to have another city councillor chime in and talk about the importance of downtown. And I think that Trudy sees the potential and wants to see downtown grow and help the entire city. Dan Majewski asks, how can we get more housing built downtown? What is the greatest barrier? Kathy, do you want to speak just like macroly on what you think the barriers are, or specifically in what you gleaned from your report in Albuquerque?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, overall, the US has a huge housing shortage. And that's for a lot of reasons. Some just stemming from the Great Recession, really, and that housing crash in 2007-8 that really stopped a lot of housing. And production just hasn't really caught up since then yet nationally. Of course, zoning is also a challenge in many cities. I didn't look into too much of the details there in Albuquerque, but kind of working through all of those is often a challenge for developers as well. But on the positive side, I think what we see is that there is that demand for housing. So I think it's a matter of trying to figure out the right balance between the policymakers and the developers for easing any kind of regulatory challenges to start developing that housing. Last thing I'll address right now, supply chain challenges are also restricting the development of housing even once it is approved and being built. So there are a number of reasons why that supply is slow to come. But again, that demand is really there and people want to live downtown.
Yeah, and I think that, unfortunately, while we have, we've built a lot of affordable housing downtown, and I think that market is proven. The market for mixed rate housing has not been proven to mitigate developer risk or lender risk in wanting to do those projects. And so we did have an announcement yesterday. We took to the Albuquerque Development Commission two housing projects. One is the Via Agave project that Mark Baker is doing, renovating the old St. Mary's nursing home into some housing. And then the second one is Jay Remby's project, the Downtowner, which is about 150 units there at First and Silver. And so I think, what cities do, what redevelopment agencies do is provide the sort of gap subsidy for initial projects to come in and take that risk where to juice the production of housing. And I think that's sort of where we are right now as a city, needing to provide subsidy to market rate development in order to prove the demand and viability of those projects. And then as the time goes on, more developers will become interested in that subsidy. That need for subsidy is reduced and eventually, hopefully, it goes away. And that's just sort of the way that I don't know if there's any downtown that has redeveloped without that sort of chronology of the private sector or the public sector sort of intervening to develop housing. Carl Holm asks about empty offices provide an opportunity to develop more mixed use spaces. What are you seeing nationally, Kathy, around office repurposing given the return work from home?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely an opportunity for office to become other uses, especially potentially housing, especially for the more class C or even B office buildings that are kind of obsolete on the office side anyways. And so IDA is actually supporting an initiative for an office conversion tax credit modeled after the historic preservation tax credit to help provide, again, as we're talking about that subsidy, to support developers who do want to turn the office developments into housing with an extra bonus if it is for affordable housing. So right now that's kind of on the hill, hope to see some progress on that. But it's really been a good rallying point across all of our members across the country who are seeing a lot of opportunities for housing development with the office. And development hasn't really, new development hasn't slowed that much. So I think developers are still seeing that opportunity in downtowns, whether it's for the office or for the multifamily side.
Yeah, and before I forget, there was something that you had mentioned to me that I think would be really interesting to folks. It's a slightly off topic, but it's about public safety. So Kathy had mentioned to me that they were just working on a report about how other cities and jurisdictions are handling sort of public safety issues downtown, and the workforce shortage of people wanting to fill those public safety roles. I was wondering if you could give us a little preview into what you guys have been learning and gleaning from other communities and how they're addressing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that report just came out last week on public safety for urban place management organizations. So that is available on the IDA website, downtown.org. But in summary, we found that it's really a challenge. And of course, downtown organizations can't solve the problem on their own. It's really a lot about partnerships with the police department, with the city, with all sorts, because the issues are coming from so many directions. But what our urban place management organizations are doing and to try to maximize resources because of that staffing shortage is really one about increasing the visibility of any kinds of ambassadors, safety personnel that are already on the street, just making them more visible so that people passing by know that there are more eyes on the street, that they're not alone. There are others who are there, especially as that foot traffic is still kind of slower to come back in the typical office hours. They are also trying to add security personnel, so adding off-duty police officers, off-duty security, and trying to work with the police department to fill in any gaps in kind of their shifts for focusing downtown. But this is a challenge because in a lot of cities we're hearing even 50% decrease of how many officers they had to serve downtowns and central areas as compared to before. And new recruits are really hard to come by. And it does take a few years before a new recruit can really become an officer on the street. But the kind of that third area that urban place management organizations are also focusing on is really being that critical source of information and data to better prioritize resources for the police department. So, many of these organizations do have ambassadors or hospitality guides who are on the street, and they're able to kind of track where there are more typical problem areas. Are there a certain segment of people who tend to be more disruptive than others, and kind of monitor the situation live and in real time and be able to report back to that. So it's serving as an additional resource to a very short-staffed police and public safety department. And so that data really makes the place management organization a valuable partner to help support the police departments. And of course, data, as it probably comes to no surprise to any of you, is really powerful in being able to communicate, where exactly the issues are and where you would need the most, where it'd be most effective to concentrate resources.
Yeah, I can, I think that's really interesting, and I agree with that. I've been in several conversations lately with APD and sort of downtown safety conversations, and they are very data driven. And if things don't get reported, if they don't have the information, they, you know, they can't make decisions based on that. So I think that is really important, and something that might seem insignificant, but you know, having, I can see how they make their decisions based on, you know, how many calls went in. But if, you know, the problems are happening and the calls aren't coming in, or other ways of documenting and providing that information to APD that may not flood their, you know, phone lines, but still provides documentation of where the needs are, I think is something that should not be understated. Let me see here. With the proposed increase in rates for trash removal to clean the city, in what ways can that be focused on general cleanliness downtown? Regular sidewalk, street cleaning, removal of shopping carts, etc. Yes, I believe that the proposed increase in trash removal is for the Clean Cities program, which includes both encampment, deals with both encampments and also with the block by block program that provides well, not quite ambassadors, but they clean they clean the streets. And so, and are somewhat ambassadors. And I hear that they do a great job in our community. Everybody loves them. So I think that increase in trash removal proposal, if it is approved by City Council, would have a very visible and tangible impact into the downtown area. So tell me about diversity and why that is one of your metrics for downtown and why it's important for downtown. Just curious.
Sure. Diversity is really, and inclusion is really one of the most important metrics that I think we look at because downtowns, again, are that heart of the city, and they really should be a place that is representative of everyone, that everyone can have access to. And so downtown should represent really the community around it. You know, too often in recent years, in particular, downtowns have been criticized for kind of becoming enclaves of the wealthy, as you know, the richer households have generally moved back downtown. But yeah, that's not what downtowns should be, and being able to be inclusive and reflective of the community around it is so critical for that kind of long-term sustainability for downtown to connect with all city residents, because it is that center and that heart of the city. And I think what we've seen, especially in the past couple of years, is a renewed focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in downtowns, to make sure that, you know, when our organizations are planning activations, that they are appealing to all segments and not just, you know, a certain kind of population. So it's to be able to really have a more active lens on, you know, who is coming downtown, and making sure that that does represent everyone who is in the larger community.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate working with you over the past year, Kathy. Your team has been great. The report is great. There's a lot more content in there. And please go to our website. It's in the chat, and look at the report yourself. Also going to make another shameless plug for the next event that we have. Oh, there's Trudy Jones. This is on June 1st with Peter Kayagama at the Chemo Theater. It's going to be exciting. It's a $10 donation. The money goes to Albuquerque Art Walk, and it's only $10. You can donate more if you want, and it comes with drinks and hors d'oeuvres. So, you know, it's practically free. So if you love downtown If you want to see it change, please come out, bring your colleagues. It'll be a fun afternoon. And there is more to come after that of what the city is planning to do, but we need everybody's support. This turning around downtown, as Trudy Jones said, is definitely something that is going to require a lot of support from the private business community. So we're looking forward to continuing this conversation and moving downtown forward. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.